It's been a year since Gramps died, and the lease on his storage unit was finally up. Me and Mom went to take care of things there, going through the various items, picking what was good to keep and what was garbage Gramps kept. A lot of old photo albums and various relics. The guy was old, and he had a mountain of stuff to prove he'd been here a while. We were sorting for days, filling up a trailer and bringing it back to our homes. There was so much crap, we had to split it between my place and Mom's. Near the end, we started saying hell with it. The storage unit was hot out here in the southeast summers, so an unconditioned metal box was like sorting boxes in an Amazon warehouse in hell. Not to mention how much the trailer was starting to cost. So we stopped going through it and just tossed everything in, unloading it in my spare room where we could sort through it without melting in the unbearable heat. Gramps was in the Navy. I knew that because he bragged about it all the damn time. So coming across some medals or files from his time wasn't surprising. Seeing one labeled Top Secret was definitely a turn though, because as far as we knew, he was just a torpedo technician on the submarines. Most of his war stories were about partying on various subs or aircraft carriers. We have a plaque and everything with his service record, commendations and all kinds of crap. He served from 1955 until nearly 2005 and has all the awards to prove it. So color me surprised when I found a box labeled Operation Fault Line, 1954, a whole 3 years before his enlistment date. I called Mom to make sure I was right too, before I even started going through the box, and she confirmed it was 1955. So I figured he had just gotten some old records or something. I wish I had left the lid on the box at this point. That must be how Pandora felt. Inside were filings full of papers, typed out records for whatever Operation Fault Line was. They were all in fantastic condition at least, with no water damage or anything, which was a miracle considering how damp and hot it is in this godforsaken town. I started flicking through the pages, skimming as I went. Location: Coggins, South Carolina. Mission statement: to research and develop new means of aquatic and amphibious warfare by unconventional or natural means. Commanding Officer: Daniel S. Serms, Captain of USS Ghost Current. I kept flipping through, looking for what the actual operation was, hoping to find some kind of TLDR at the bottom of the massive stacks of paper. Nothing in the main file but a load of military and bureaucrat jargon, which I've tried to read multiple times since, but it just hurts my head. Here are the bullet points for what I found though, just to make it easy. The plan involved submarines with special prototype torpedoes. These were equipped with some sort of special payload that made a massive vacuum wherever it hit, essentially creating such a high impact against anything it hit that there was a big enough explosion to both drive away all the water, yet suck all the air from the massive area it happens. That's as best as I can explain the science jargon behind it, to be honest. I'm a copy editor. Science was never my thing, much less the deep ocean. Anyway, they used these vacuum torpedoes to try and create natural ocean phenomena, a sort of environmental warfare at sea. Except it was done with the intent of creating potential tsunamis to terrorize enemy populations into surrendering. This was prompted as a response to the long-term devastation of a nuke, as opposed to a natural disaster. Then, it gave the United States an alibi to go in under the guise of aid and slowly insert themselves into the country. Sounds familiar, right? The real discovery in there was a journal from Gramps himself. The damn thing was full of scribbles, writing in the margins and everything, wherever he could. Strange symbols took up some pages, while others were just full of what looked like another language. Transcribing his handwriting was a pain in the ass, but I think I finally got it all. Turns out, Gramps enlisted at 18, not at 19 like he told us. Now I honestly see why he doesn't want to remember that year, if he did at all. His transcriptions are below, though I've cut out some of the more undecipherable ones. That way it makes sense. October 16, 1954. I'm shipping out for the first time. Can't believe it finally happened. Getting my orders and shipping out after boot camp seemed like it was going to take forever. Now I'm at Camp Pikram. This place is small though, and that's really something with where I'm coming from. The little island here just has the Navy base really, but there are a few stores and a little school just outside the main gates that keep things interesting. Not too many bars, though Anna told me I'm better off for that. I don't know why she's so nervous. Not like I'm going to meet someone prettier than her out here. I'm starting out as a torpedo technician's apprentice, and apparently it's one of the best jobs on the subs. All I have to do is make sure the torpedo tubes are clean and working, then load them in whenever we need to fire. Apparently after a few trips, I can start taking over on the scope and aiming. I know that wasn't really for me joining up after everything, but I think the submarines are going to be much safer now than they were 10 years ago. Alright, I've got to go to my first briefing in a few minutes. Orientation stuff, all that. Fingers crossed we get some interesting orders soon. October 26, 1954. Whoa, wasn't expecting to get them that fast. I've been stuck doing a lot of grunt work around the base, but that's typical for new recruits, from what we've been told. The guys in our unit are all nice guys. We're getting along fine at least. The command are a little more on edge than the newest of us here. No idea why though. We've had some free time, and the beaches around here are pretty nice. It doesn't hurt that they're barely 10 minutes walk from anywhere on the base, so we can get out there whenever we want to. Anyway, new orders are that the sub is going to take a look out in the Atlantic, near some fault line. Something about researching the natural terrain to detect earthquakes and tsunamis early. I don't know, not really the things I expected from signing up with the Navy. We're shipping out early tomorrow morning. Supposed to be a 10-day trip. This'll be our first time really going down in a sub. So hopefully, nobody gets some weird case of the crazies down there. I don't think I'll get to do much, but it'll be nice to get a feel for the waters out there. It looks like a storm might be rolling in tonight, and the captain told us to make sure we have everything set before daybreak, so we can get in and get out quickly. I'm turning in early. October 30, 1954. It's been 3 long days on the boat, and I'm just sitting down to sleep for the first time in at least 2 days. Things haven't gone well. We arrived at the fault line early this morning and started the survey nearly immediately. It's dark down here. Really dark. Like nothing I've ever seen. And cloudy nights out in rural south get damn dark. This was different though. Like it was trying to get inside the sub with us. Snuff out any light it could find in here. It's cold too, even with the close quarters and machinery of the sub. Something happened when we started the survey though. I was able to look down from one of the ports to see the fault line, where it started at least. It was hard to make out, even with the bright light they were shining on it. That thing was bright too, like the beam from a lighthouse under the water. We noticed when it turned on that a lot of things suddenly darted away in the water. Guess the things down here ain't too fond of the light. The fault was thin when it started out, but as we moved along, it grew much wider. The light was shining deep down by now, but it still couldn't cut through the darkness deep in the line. Every now and then we caught a glimpse of some deep-sea fish or another, each one uglier than the last with bulging eyes and sharp teeth. Looked like nightmares in the light. But they never stayed long, retreating back to the shadows quickly like vampires. Around 10 minutes in, we had to shut off our light because it started to overheat. Doesn't sound like something that could happen with as cold as it was, but that's why I just cleaned the torpedo tubes, I guess. I think it was Nadler that first saw it out of his port. The light had been off for a few minutes, and the darkness outside was trying to get in again. Then suddenly, a dim light started shining through the port on his side. It started getting brighter and brighter, rising up toward the entire sub. None of us could tell what it was, but there was something like a sun rising up from the fault line. The shadows around it rose up, fleeing from the light, and fish came swarming out of the cave down there in front. Command wasn't saying a damn thing as the light rose up. Dorsey, one of the older guys on the ship, says it's not like them to be quiet about something like this, especially with the threat the Russians are posing right now. There's no way we can be sure that's not some weapon they planted there. Our lead torpedo tech, Hansen, grabbed me then. He pulled me away from the ports and back over to the torpedo tube, telling me we had to load one quick. I went toward the torpedo rack when he stopped me, opening a small compartment underneath us full of red torpedoes. These didn't look like any I had seen before, with odd markings all over them. I didn't question it, loading it in with him and making all the preparations to fire. Command was screaming orders back at us through the tube, telling us to fire now. And finally Hansen hit the eject button after sealing the tube, sending a massive burst of smoke into our small compartment as it blasted out. I ran out of the torpedo compartment just to find half the boys collapsed in the throughway. Most of them were knocked out cold. Some twitching, some foaming at the mouth. I couldn't do anything but stumble through toward the bridge, trying to find out what was going on. The one thing I did notice was the bright light coming through every port I passed. Then, it veered off like it was going back down the fault line. All I saw as it swam by was a couple of tentacles trailing behind the light, covered in sharp spines or pins. They definitely didn't look friendly. When I got to the bridge, Command seemed a little surprised to see me. They weren't too concerned about the bodies in the throughway though. Said they just got a case of hypoxia from the quick rise to the surface we had to make. Everyone came back awake a few minutes later. But something just wasn't right about them. After we got back to the base, they dismissed everyone to medical, with no word on why. We all went through some extensive stuff, but it was all mental. They were constantly questioning our psychological state, asking us what we saw. Are we sure of what we saw? Things like that. I just had to tell them I didn't see anything, but the other guys were apparently scarred by whatever it was. November 2nd, 1954. It's been a whirlwind couple of days in the barracks. Lots of people in and out, with doctors and some hit shrinkers coming in to talk to everyone. I can't get any damn answers from anyone about what went on. A fault line survey turning into a damn meltdown for half a submarine just don't sound like something normal. I tried asking Dorsey about it when we finally got a few minutes alone. He thought it was something the Soviets might have come up with. What that paranoid son of a bitch said shook me to my goddamn core. He thought everything was some new plan by the rats to take us out. But whatever he saw outside that port was different. He said the light was just some kind of lure, like the bait we would use for a fish on a hook. Whatever was trying to lure us in wasn't of this world, according to him. Said it was one of those pulp novel monsters that you see at drugstore counters. Some real Jules Verne nightmare stuff. Apparently, the thing came back up a little bit after I laid down in my bunk. The whole thing glowing this green-purple color. Dorsey said it was brighter than anything he had seen, right down here in all the dark. When I asked him what it looked like, he said it reminded him of a squid he found off the coast of Japan a few years ago. The thing was bathing in radiation wash-off from one of the bombs, and he said it was bigger than a steam engine with cars attached to it. This thing was even bigger apparently, because Dorsey told me it could have easily swallowed the ship if it wanted to. The most terrifying thing about it, he said, was that it was covered in teeth. The spines I thought I was seeing were just the tentacles of it, and the rest of it was covered in even larger, more vicious hooked points. Dorsey says the thing came up, one monstrous eye showing from the middle of a gaping maw, tentacles splayed out, ready to devour the sub before we got that torpedo loaded up. Dorsey was off the coast of Japan when they dropped the nukes. He doesn't shake easily. This thing must have been terrifying. From what Dorsey told me, he saw something when he looked at it. Like a vision, or some dream, I guess. He wouldn't really talk about the contents of it. But it got to him. November 2nd, 1954. Dorsey started screaming in his sleep tonight. The barracks were mostly quiet, half the guys being kept in the psych ward. He was just kind of whimpering at first, no real words or anything. Then he started screaming, talking about how we poked something, said the thing was going to lay waste to all on the surface, that our minds and souls were forfeit for going down there. He wasn't making any damn sense. Sometime by the end of the ranting and talk of more bloodshed and hell, he started to get up and go to his trunk. We were just transfixed by what he was doing. It was nothing for him to have some angry rant about one thing or another, whether it be the rats or the commissary food. This was foaming at the mouth though. Absolute madness. Nadler tried to give him a tap on the shoulder and bring him back, but Dorsey just shoved him off and kept going to his trunk. He finally found what he was looking for too. An old pistol, dulled and scratched from time in war, was gripped in his hand now. Dorsey turned back to us, talking about how we were all damned now that we saw it. Said our souls belong to that thing now, for a fate worse than hell itself. Then, he looked right at me and said some words that will haunt me for the rest of my goddamn life. What's the point in living if I know what I'm in for after? The next thing that came out of his mouth was smoke after he put the gun in and pulled the trigger. First time I saw the insides of a person, splattered all over the bunker ceiling. November 4th, 1954. I found Nadler hanging from one of the shower heads in the bathroom today. He was gone before I got there. There wasn't any sign of his state, except for being a little more quiet than normal. Nadler left a message too though, scrawled on a little note he was clutching. If you're smart, you'll follow me. November 10, 1954. The incident here never happened. That's the official report anyway. The boys who were looking outside during the survey, they've all dropped like flies over the past week. There's nothing to say they were ever there. Just a folded flag sent to the family and some words of a diving accident. Don't think they even got the bodies back. But not sure where they ended up. I've been told I'm being released on a medical leave until February. And apparently, that's my official enlistment now. Swear, they've poked and prodded me to hell and back already. But apparently, I haven't had any irregularities found like the others. From what upper command is telling me, I'll start out in February 2 ranks higher. So at least, I get something out of all of this. For now, I'm heading out tomorrow, going back home for a while before my time starts again. I'll probably never know what happened. But I'm going to do my best to forget about all this. December 10, 1958. I started having dreams. Whatever the thing was down there, it's talking to me. I think that's it at least. I don't know anymore. The dreams are nothing but the black abyss. Nothing around except that pale glowing light that starts coming up from the vault. I always wake up before it gets to me. But the voice that whispers at me says awful things. It tells me to kill and use the bodies. It wants me to make a shrine to it, to help it come here. It's loud. I keep telling myself it's a dream. I'm going to see the doctors when I get back in February. That's it. That's all there was in the journal, other than the scribbles, which fill up most of the last page. I'm still not sure what the hell he saw down there. But after he went back, things must have been fine. Maybe he found some way to lock it all away somewhere. But part of me wonders about what the hell could have been down there. Gramps never said anything about stuff like this, and always told us the strangest thing he saw was a ghost ship drifting by empty one day. It's all just confusing. After that, hopefully, he'll be able to just rest in peace. Somewhere with Grandma and their family. Hopefully, not in whatever twisted hell this thing came from. I'm going to leave the journal be though. I've watched enough horror movies to know that's a recipe for a bad time.